You know, I've been trying to understand what the Irish philosopher Edmund Burke said, that the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is when good men do nothing. And that would seem to be the case in Nigeria 7 years down the line, when some young girls were plucked off their classrooms in a place called Chibok in Nigeria's northeast region. Today, we'll be bringing someone from that region who is also an attorney at law and an expert in security matters in Nigeria to make sense of what exactly is happening, because it's becoming one too many. Welcome to VSA. I'm Sulaiman. I remember very vividly the morning of Friday, February 26. Nigerians got the news of the abduction of more than 300 schoolgirls in their boarding school in Jangebe, Zamfara State, in Nigeria's northwest region. As bad as the news was, Nigerians were beginning to accept this bad tradition in the face of it means regularity. It was pitiable, yet unsurprising. It's the second school abduction in 2021 alone, and the second in barely 2 weeks of the abduction of school pupils in Kagara, Niger State. It is now the fourth major school abduction in the administration of Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. The school abductions have schoolgirls, Dapchi schoolgirls abduction in Yobe in February of 2018, where 110 pupils were kidnapped and 104 returned home. Kankara schoolboys abduction in Katsina in December of 2020, where 333 pupils were kidnapped from their hostels and they were later rescued. Kagara school abduction, where 42 persons, including students and teachers, were taken away for 10 days. And the latest in Jangebe, where more than 300 girls have been abducted by the so-called bandits. That's the name given to these people marauding and terrorizing young children in some parts of Nigeria. Nigeria is putting her future in harm's way, and these are not all. There have been other abductions of students in madrasas and kids right under their parents' watch. Travelers get abducted on roads. Farmers get kidnapped on their farmlands. Traveling and farming takes great mental strength for Nigerians now. Why have these abductions been left for so long? What is the government doing and not doing? Who is safe in Nigeria? Well, we're discussing this today. Joining me now, Daniel Boala, barrister, Lincoln in London, notary public and former senatorial aspirant in Borno State, Nigeria's northeast region. And of course, Professor Peter Kagwanja, President and Chief Executive Officer, Africa Policy Institute, Government Advisor in Kenya. Gentlemen, welcome to Village Square, Africa.
Thank you for having us.
It's really not a good time for, Africans like yourselves to come on live television to talk about the future of children, especially the girl child, knowing full well that this amounts to a security situation. Since 2014, let me start with you because this happened within your region, Daniel Boala. It happened in 2014. Your country, Nigeria, has seen the abduction of more than 1,000 students. Tell us why you think this has continued, even as the government says it is on top of the situation.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure to speak to your viewers tonight. When this thing started in the northeast, and especially in Chibok, which is about 15 minutes drive from my hometown, at first we thought it was just a simple scenario that can just be dealt with at once, and it will be for all. But I am understanding from the security strategy point that the bandits or terrorists or whatever the nomenclature is know too well that if they go after just private citizens and not ones that are either categorized as students or in school, they may not be able to attract national or even global attention. Because you see, there is a premium placed on education all over the world. that are into UN institutions that deal with education. Then you have sub-regional institutions that place premium on education. Then you bring it down to the nation. And so anytime they abduct students, they know that what they have abducted are not just students, but a political or economic capital. And that is why when they began that thing at the beginning, the Boko Haram, they kept them. They didn't kill them, which was very different from the way they kill individuals when they, abduct them. They kept the students and continued to use them for economic advantage. Because the government at the time could not deal with this situation decisively and frontally, now it has become hydra-headed and has assumed a position where you see it in every part of the country, especially prevalent in the Northwest. There is even a dimension that in the course of this conversation, I will help us appreciate that is now beginning to give us the feeling that if decisive step is not taken by the president in dealing with states that negotiate with bandits, then we will soon come to that point where political office holders and organized cartel around the country will begin to use that as an advantage for economic purposes.
Let me bring in Professor Peter here. Listening to Daniel, what readily comes to mind listening to the picture he's just painted, especially going back 7 years, Chibok?
Thank you, Suleiman. I think the first point to note is why terrorists find it necessary to abduct school children. And that leads us to ask the question, what is the purpose of abduction for the terrorists? I think the answer is very simple. Terrorists are seeking publicity. Therefore, killing does not really augur well for them. But keeping children for too long with them exposes the vulnerability of the state and also kind of exhibit their potency and their power, that they are able to do this with the total impunity. And therefore, what is at stake here is the reputation of the Nigerian state. What is at stake here is the reputation of the African state in general. And therefore, the abduction of children might look like the abduction of just the ordinary vulnerable part of society, but it has larger implications than just the abduction of the society, that it is basically the impotency of the African leadership, the impotency of the African instruments of power to protect those who require protection. And that does not augur well for what we're calling Africa rising. You cannot be rising when your children are become pawns in this particular game. That's what comes to mind, Suleiman.
Peter, I want to stay with you before I go back to Daniel, because you just touched on something, because you moved it from Nigeria to the larger, continent, saying that truly this looks like some people coming to abduct the future of the continent. Tell us why this has continued, because now you've said, both of you have agreed that they do this to get attention, especially international attention. But there must be some kind of move by the state to stopping this. But it's been one too many in Nigeria specifically.
That is true. If one could compare what is happening in Nigeria with what is happening in Kenya, around the same time that Boko Haram was beginning to become a major, force in Nigeria, or let's say West African region, the same time Al-Shabaab was beginning also to become a major force in Eastern Africa in general and Kenya. But more in Kenya, it was even more dramatic between 2010 and 2013. More dramatic in the sense that they could even come and grow up a bus, they come grow up a drinking place, they would even go to school and grow up schools. So the determination of the state and the declaration of the war on Al-Shabaab made a huge difference. For 2 years after the declaration of the war, Al-Shabaab continued to basically throw bombs and grenades into all manner of social places, and getting a lot of publicity for that matter. But after 2014, the state moved surgically, using all manner of instruments, and push the terrorists into, Somalia, there were no more abductions. Every day we were getting abduction about in Lamu, Mombasa, abduction in Mombasa, abduction in Garissa, refugees being abducted, and so on. What point am I making? That the state has to be decisive and has to declare a war on the terrorists. If that doesn't happen, terrorists will still continue to make capital out of that, and their capital is publicity. It is publicity that enables them to continue going, that gives them the reputation and the name that they have. When there is no publicity about them, they're as good as dead. And that's what has happened to Al-Shabaab inside Kenya. Al-Shabaab is still a big issue in Somalia. And I can talk about that. But again, it is the determination of the state in Africa to rein in all forces of terror that is going to make the difference. It is not how much, international community, how much humanitarian organizations, how much well-meaning individuals or groups are coming to Africa. The state has to make the difference.
Let me bring in Daniel here. Daniel, listening to Peter, I think he said something that perhaps resonates with you as a leader in Nigeria and around your senatorial district. He said something about the determination of the government at the center and even the regional government to push these people out. Have you seen that so far in Nigeria?
I quite frankly do not see that. Although there is effort on the part of government, but the effort is not enough, and I will explain why. For example, we have a federal system of government that has not given advantage to the regional political office holders. Here we call them the governors, to be able to have the instrument of coercion in their states and match the bandits and all forms of violence within their territory. And so everything lies on the center. Section 14 of the Constitution says the security of life and the welfare of the people is the primary responsibility of government. Now, I have suggested in a different forum that for the president, in this case, to bring a decisive step towards curbing this, because this is either-headed. It will go to the southeast and it will go to the southwest. The minute the commercialization of this banditry has come to stay in any part of the country, it will be applied in other parts, just like kidnapping and all of that. And so the president will have to take, and I'm happy the president said that the government will not negotiate with the bandits. And I like what Peter said, that the decisive will of government is critical. So having said that the government will not negotiate with the bandit, you are likely going to find some governors, either because they feel they are weak or because there is even a conspiracy, whether they use these individuals to confer economic sabotage on the government. So the president will have to then take a very bold step by announcing to the governors in the Council of State meeting that I suggested he will call, that if any governor negotiate with bandits, that state, they will declare state of emergency and they will seek the approval of the National Assembly to remove the governor and send an administrator. The minute you are able to do to one state, then all other states will know that there is a political will on the part of the government to fight against this element that want to fight against the future of Africa. In Nigeria, it is not just about the future of Africa that is the reason why they are fighting. They are also fighting to confer economic advantage on them and subvert the government. Now, look at this way. And this is why the intelligence community is also called upon to begin to interrogate and investigate the possibilities that private citizens and cartel can use this criminal element as instrument of collecting the funds of the state, where it will be under the radar. There will not be any form of transfer that the EFCC will say they are going to pass on any public office holder in the future. So if the government does not make a decisive, imagine a situation where the bandits and government, they are sitting under the tree, negotiating, and in the presence of law enforcement, the army and the police, that they are supposed to run when they see them. But right under their presence, they are doing the negotiation. So there is so much that calls for thorough investigation, but much more than that, the president has to take a decision.
Let me quickly go to Nairobi. to join Peter. You see, listening to him, it would seem as if he's got that conversation with you before coming on live. He's in agreement with you. He says there's not been any form of, deliberate attempt at showing that these governors within that region are ready to stamp these people out, even when they have been seen on live television to have conversations with the bandits who come around to kidnap the students from the school. Now, tell us, for instance, Africa has been more reactive, especially Nigeria, instead of being proactive, as you said. What needs to change in terms of the system and approach we have seen, especially in Nigeria?
Let's make two broad observation on this, and I agree with Daniel regarding one concept he has used, that is commercialization of, let's say, this criminality, whether it's abduction or whatever else they want to do. The first point to make is that let's appreciate that terrorism, in all its guises, is a commercial enterprise, and therefore terrorists are basically entrepreneurs, and they use every opportunity to make an extra dime. In order to finance and support their activities, they need a lot of money, and they manipulate every situation. And therefore, in a country like Nigeria, where we have a federal system, and where the center may not necessarily cohere very well with the periphery or the federal states, that's a gap that terrorists would want to use. I want to give the example of Al-Shabaab in Somalia or in the Horn of Africa, which basically is one of the largest commercial enterprise on the continent, I guess. I would argue so. I'm told by some sources it's about $350 billion enterprise per year. So it's a commercial empire. In order to maintain it, you need to abduct, you need and ask for, reparations or negotiate either openly or underhand. But the end result is that you get money. You control territory where you tax people or even get whatever you want in order to continue your exercise. That point we need to remain with, and Nigeria needs to deal with that you are not dealing just with terrorists, you are also dealing with entrepreneurs whose survival depends on the activities they are undertaking. And in this category, therefore, you can bring in militias. And there is always a very thin line between what we call terrorists and what we call militias, whether it's Niger Delta or it's in Nairobi, the Mungiki, or we're talking about South Africa, other township gangs. All these thrive on extortion, on acquiring resources by using force. The second point one want to make is that any appeasement of any kind, and the debate about whether to negotiate or not to negotiate, the terrorist group is alive. It is alive and well, and many people are now beginning to say we need to talk, particularly after the event in Afghanistan, where the United States decided to negotiate with the Taliban. That brought a whole new dimension that governments or states or segments of the government can begin to negotiate at whatever level with the terrorists. Now, what you're doing is you are basically appeasing the devil. And the moment you do it, be prepared every day to sacrifice to the devil. And what I would ask for Nigeria is that it is nothing less than no compromise can win the freedom of Nigerians, the kids. If the state compromise by starting to think that these are better terrorists than these others, or we negotiate with these ones, we don't negotiate with these ones, this is going to be a permanent problem rather than a problem to solve overnight. Let me quickly bring in, sorry to cut you there,
listening to what you've highlighted, the thing here is that you have just said it to mean that the governors within that region pay ransom, in another word, give them money, and that is why this has become a business that just might not end if they continue giving them money anytime children are being abducted.
I'm saying, and I'm speaking from experience, from research experience, that when we had what we call the seaborne terrorism in our place, which we call piracy in the Indian Ocean, what was happening is that pirates would be asked for a huge amount of money. Then somebody goes to negotiate in order to let the ships go because of what they contain. And that gave rise to one of the most lucrative business in the Indian Ocean seaboard off the Somali coast, until certain governments, or particularly the Kenya government and the government, certain other international governments, said that enough is enough. And they went straight, including the United States, they went straight for the pirates or seaborne terrorists. And the seaborne terrorists within a short time disappeared. Now we have no problem in the Indian Ocean. Why? Because somebody decided we're not going to pay ransom and we are going to come after you. And we are going to come after you with all the resources available. State power, intelligence, and so on. The problem we have and the problem the terrorists are exploiting is a kind of a divide and conquer strategy, where if you know the central government is too far, then you deal with the regional government or federal government. And if the federal governments are not working, work with the subordinates. So it's a question of divide and conquer. The moment you provide that, your goose is cooked.
Sorry again, Peter. Let me call in Daniel. I understand is back. I hope I don't lose this connection before he gets the question and gives the answer. Daniel, apologies. Good to have you back again. It's been an interesting time with both of you gentlemen, and of course, so sad you missed the perspective from Peter. He's saying, well, it looks like this has refused to go because he's towing almost the line you dropped before we lost that connection. Does it mean that, let's ask a straight question now, does it look to you that the governors pay ransom to secure the release of some of these students, and that is why this has refused to stop?
Yes, in a way, because first of all, those who call for ransom have, you see, the idea of ransom and negotiation must be premised on objective of the group. In this case, they call themselves bandits. What are their objective when they kidnap the individuals? There are some communities you go where the people have a set objective to say, this is what we want to be done. And if the government is negotiating, assuming without conceding that they have a proper objective, the negotiation will be that they are demanding good education, they are demanding hospitals, they are demanding one or two things that the government will then promise we are going to implement them, implement these policies or objectives that you have. But in this case, they are criminal elements that kidnap school children and hope to be given money to release these individuals. And where is the justification? For example, if the government said we were able to secure the release of so and so individual, we pay ransom, how much did you pay? What evidence do we have to prove that you actually gave the money to them? How do we even know whether or not the quote-unquote ransom was not money released and then to be taken through some other means? There is nowhere in the world where you will negotiate with bandits without a set objective, whose chiefest aim is to inflict terror and injury to the people of the country in the hope that they will sabotage the country economically. So the idea from the get-go of negotiating with bandits is faulted. And that is why the president said he is not supporting that at all. But I'm sure that there are some governors who will feel that since we don't have the instrument of coercion in the state, and since you cannot come to our aid, then we have to do what we have to do to bail ourselves in the given situation. So this is the reason why the president will have to go beyond just talking and then acting to prove to the people that he is serious about securing the lives of people.
You know, Daniel, before I go to Nairobi, I think I get a sense of what you're trying to say. Let's open it and ask. It looks like this is almost tied to corruption, because you say if truly they decide to give ransom money to some of the so-called bandits, no one knows the amount of money that has been given. And again, no one knows if this is all cooked up to launder funds. Is that what is that what you're trying to say?
Yes, that is what I'm calling on the intelligence community to begin to interrogate and see critically. For example, if you give the bandit, let's assume that you give them 300 or 500 million? What evidence do you have, number one? When we see negotiation in the video clips that have gone around, you won't see the physical giving of the money. You will see a conversation. That's number one. Number two, when you give them the money, where do they go to and what do they do with the money? There is no evidence to suggest they reside anywhere. There is no evidence to suggest that the money they receive, they are actually using it to meet the stated objective, for which in the first place they try to extort the government. So it is just criminal element that come and they can be used by anybody. If you see them on television, apart from the arms they have, there is no indication from the crown of their head to the soles of their feet that these people actually are beneficiaries of quote unquote the ransom that they talk about. So that's why we're calling on the intelligence community to begin to probe further and investigate, because terrorism around the world is beginning to take some hydra-headed dimension to it. And this, in my honest belief, should begin to raise some question and curiosity in the eyes of the community, because this might be a conduit through which governors or private citizens that will have organized criminals who will catch individuals, get some ransom, and confer benefit to themselves in the same way that they kidnap private citizens and collect money from their relatives and loved ones. That's why the government should never agree to the idea of negotiation or giving of ransom at all.
Let's try to wind down, and I'd like to go back quickly to Nairobi, where Professor Peter is. You're of the African Policy Institute, and of course, you've been studying what's happening on the continent. Time was when it's all about light and small arms, but today, what we see, especially even in Nigeria, infiltration of heavy weapons for terrorism and crimes. Those bandits, the last we saw, were carrying RPGs. Those weapons must have beaten border checks. Are you worried that it is a general problem now and not just the governments alone?
I think we need to take it from where Daniel has left it, where he said that we need to emphasize the role of intelligence. And I think, and I believe strongly that unless counterterrorism or countercrime is intelligence-led, then we are not going anywhere. Why? Because the problem of terrorism is a little bit complex. It is made complex by the fact that other vested interests begin to tie into the problem of terrorism. Daniel has talked about people who are too willing, too eager to pay ransom. And when you dig deeper into that willingness to pay ransom, it is because there is a cut for them. There's some politicians who would want to finance their campaigns by virtually getting money from this source. And therefore, we need intelligence-led approaches in order to see whether this can happen, this can be dealt with in a holistic manner. Second, on the question of arms, the issue is that our borders are porous. Many of our neighboring countries are at war. And because they're at war, a lot of arms are coming in. Gone are the days when we used to talk about small arms and light weapons. Now we are talking about big arms and heavy weapons. Because, take for example, the Al-Shabaab, they have the tanks. Now we are talking about their drones. Some of these, terrorist groups have drones. So the state has also to adjust accordingly to deal with this now heavy weapons and, not small arms, but heavy arms and heavy weapons. So in this regard, the arms market globally is opening itself up to all manner of buyers. And among those who purchase these arms are terrorists. Some of the terrorists, by the way, Suleiman, have helicopters. They can go and do, like in the East and Central Africa, they are going and basically going down, taking ivories from elephants, putting them in, and before the anti-poaching authorities realize they are many, many miles away. Others, I am told, are now I've been starting even to export uranium. Some of the, like Al-Shabaab and others, are in very, very lucrative small pieces that they are carrying, but you don't know they're carrying billions and billions of local shillings. So the point is that the world is changing, but one thing is constant. Terrorism and those who work with it are a part and parcel of a commercial network. And those commercial networks need to be unearthed as such. It is not just local forces, but there are linkages, even with international players, who are benefiting from terrorism as a way of making capital or even accessing African wealth. We need to basically state as it is that the African wealth is at the heart of terrorism. African resources are at the heart of terrorism. And our states need to protect us. Our intelligence needs to lead the way in looking for solutions.
Well, it's a fine place for us to wrap up this very, very interesting talk. I do hope we should have you back again, Professor Peter Kwanja, President and Chief Executive Officer, Africa Policy Institute and Government Advisor in Kenya. We need to stay on this because it looks like, well, we have pockets of criminal gangs across the continent. We need to unpack it and see how governments across the continent can better, fight this together and take them out of the continent. Once again, thank you very much for being such a nice company. And of course, Daniel Bwala, many thanks for speaking with us. Still to come here on VSA, COVID-19 vaccine finally arriving in many African countries, and just in time, Nigeria is about to get its own share of the vaccine. Join us again. Now, March 2nd, Tuesday specifically, is the date Nigeria has set to receive its own COVID-19 vaccines. But Africa's CDC has reported close to 4 million cases of COVID-19 since the disease was first discovered. South Africa is the continent's hardest hit country with over 1 million cases reported. Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Kenya, and even Nigeria are also some of the hard-hit countries from the disease. Vaccinations have been ongoing in various parts of the world, with the WHO and African leaders warning of vaccine nationalism, which sees poorer countries of the world left behind in vaccination programs. Nigeria will receive 4 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines, and well, that's according to the government, while Ghana and Ivory Coast have received theirs from the UN-backed COVAX program. More African countries are also expected to receive theirs soon. Well, there's a bit of fuss. AstraZeneca vaccines have been found not to work against the South African variant of the disease, which is raging in some countries on the continent. This, of course, has left some countries with no choice but to seek other alternatives. Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which was recently approved by the FDA, has been used successfully in South Africa. While the choice of vaccine is a contention on the continent, how countries will get these vaccines and how they should use them must also be laid out. Research fellow at the University of Aberdeen, Dr. Peter Imoisi, joins me now from Scotland. Dr. Imoisi, welcome to VSA.
Thank you for having me.
Always a delight to have you. The AstraZeneca vaccines have been a cause of medical debate. Tell us, if you will, what is it about the vaccine that's causing so much furore?
I know when it comes to the Oxford AstraZeneca, first we have to know that this particular vaccine is stored at 2 to 8 degrees. And it's actually deployed using the adenovirus. So you kind of weaken a virus. Then you have the spike protein. The spike protein is the entryway of the virus into the human host. So you have that particular region of that particular virus infused into that weakened virus, which is then used to vaccinate people. So that's the mechanism of the production of the Oxford AstraZeneca. However, based on their clinical trials studies, there are a few issues here and there when it comes to the dose of administration, and at the same time when it comes to efficacy. in their report, we were told that when it comes to half dose and full dose, you get about 92% efficacy. But when you get a standard dose, what that means is the standard dose is the actual dose that was used in their clinical trial. You have about, I think, 72% efficacy. So this discrepancy is what led to the FDA, which is the Food and Drug Administration in the US, to instruct AstraZeneca to also do a clinical trial study in the US, which is ongoing, that is phase 3 trial. And they've actually recruited over 30,000 participants, and that is still ongoing. Now, when it comes down to the issue we have in Africa, I see in the news that we kind of band around that we are getting Oxford AstraZeneca. And I think I need to make this clear here. When it comes to the vaccine we are getting in Nigeria or the one that is in Ghana, is actually a patent right that was issued to the Serum Institute of India for them to produce Oxford AstraZeneca with a code name Covishield. So what that means is that the Serum Institute of India, they have the patent right to produce this particular vaccine, which is good. Now, the other angle they went ahead to do was to start their own clinical trial at clinical trial phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, which is also good as well because it's necessary to do that because you're developing, you're producing a vaccine all over again, but you have the same recipe. So let's use the word here, recipe. But because you're producing this vaccine all over again in a different environment and with different circumstances, the science here is you need to do clinical trial. And the reason for that is you want to check if the same standard of this product that was produced in the UK is the same standard that is maintained in India. That is one. Then two, you also want to check if the same efficacy that was reported in the UK is the same efficacy you're going to get in India when you reproduce this particular vaccine. Then three, you also want to check that if the condition for which this vaccine was produced in your institute hasn't hampered the entire production line. So you want to check all these things before you go ahead to deploy this vaccine in a wider scale. And based on that, India went ahead to recruit people early November last year for the clinical trial phase 3. And I think sometime in January the 5th or January the 3rd, they went ahead to approve this particular vaccine where the clinical trial phase 3 is still ongoing. So when it comes to the efficacy, I've checked almost all standard agency. For instance, the European Medicine Agency, I've checked their website. There is nowhere where we are told the efficacy of Covishield. I've not seen that. That's for me, that's my own personal observation. I've not seen that as well. I've asked a couple of scientists if the clinical trial phase 3 data for the Covishield, that is the Oxford AstraZeneca reproduced as Covishield, if there's any data available for us to see. There is none, basically. So I think we should tell our people exactly what we are getting. We are getting Covishield, but this Covishield is a patent right from the Oxford AstraZeneca. But the way you present the news in Africa, it seems as if we are getting the Oxford AstraZeneca from the UK or from Belgium.
You know, you've been so concerned about what's happening on the continent, and I recall you had also written, quite frankly, and spoken at different fora. You know, Africa CDC has approved a vaccine for nations without the South African variant. Now, as a researcher, does this worry you? This vaccine may not help those with the South African variant.
You've asked a very germane question, and that is the question we should be asking ourselves. Remember that the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine was initially deployed in South Africa. Then the South African variant, which is the B1351, came about. Then we realized that the vaccine was not effective against this variant, and that was returned back. Recently, there was a publication, I think, an announcement in Nigeria. There is a variant in Nigeria that is called the B1525 variant. And in that variant, we have something called, 48K mutation in that variant. Now, that 48K mutation of that Nigerian variant is also present in the South African variant, and it's also present in the P1 variant of Brazil, which are variants of concern. So if this mutation that is present both in South African variant and in the Brazilian variant is also in your own variant in Nigeria, there lies a fear if, for instance, the Oxford AstraZeneca through the Covishield you intend to deploy in Nigeria, whereas wherein the COVID shield itself, we don't also know the efficacy of this particular COVID shield. If this vaccine will be effective in our own population, we don't know. And that's where you need to do something called the bridge trial to check if, for instance, when you deploy this COVID shield in Nigeria, if it's going to be effective among your own population. Again, you recall, I know very well that you follow this pandemic quite closely. You know very well that when it comes to this pandemic, it hasn't played out across board the same. So what you have in Nigeria or in Africa is the same, is different from what you have in the UK, in Italy, in Spain, in the US, and all over the world. So it's different. So based on that, you should be able to do a mini research to check if the vaccine you intend to deploy in your own country or in your continent is going to be effective. And I give it to South Africa basically because they were able to detect early enough to say, you know what, this Oxford AstraZeneca will not be effective in our own climate. Because of that, we are deploying a different vaccine altogether entirely. But my beloved country, Nigeria, I think we're just going to just take it and deploy it immediately without any element of a few abridged trial to see if there's any efficacy of this vaccine that we intend to deploy as well. Again, don't forget as well that the possibility that you may have more variants outside the one that is mentioned already in Nigeria is there because the way this virus behave, it kind of mutates over time. And based on this mutation, it's encouraged by the behavioral pattern of the people. And again, when you look at the behavioral pattern of Nigeria or many African countries, you know that we are not really adhering to the non-pharmaceutical intervention. And if you don't really adhere to these rules strictly, it means that you're giving the virus the opportunity to mutate and develop new way to survive. Earlier on this particular TV, I made mention the fear I had, I think that was December last year, that if we go about the way we do things in Nigeria or in Africa, we may likely be picking up variants that this particular vaccine may not be effective against. And here we have today down the line, what I said back in the days are actually playing out right now.
You know, Peter, let me come in here quickly. You know, there are new discoveries of the long COVID or
True.
long haul, as it's called. People who have recovered, they've been showing disturbing signs. Tell us more about this.
So because the virus is new, we don't really know exactly what to expect. And that's why we are saying that it is better not to get COVID than to get COVID and recover from it. But don't forget that people behave differently. Young people have actually contracted this disease and they recovered well, whereas there are a few percentage of individuals that actually got COVID and they have these signs of weakness over time after 4 months, 5 months. They still have, they've not really have a full restoration of their smell or taste. So this is more like an open field now for scientists to delve into, to do more research ongoing, to see what is the implication of COVID once you've recovered from COVID. So for now, we are still more in the dark until there's research-based evidence to tell exactly what is going on. That is one. Again, when it comes to the people who have recovered as well, we are told that the antibody you get from this virus stays a little bit, I think 6 months plus before it kind of went out. And if that is the case, which is a behavioral pattern of coronaviruses, you could also deduce that what is the durability of these vaccines once you get this vaccine? What is the durability of the antibody you're going to get? That as well, we don't know. And that is based on research that is ongoing. So by the next 12 or 24 months, we'll be able to tell if, for instance, the vaccine that we've administered to people actually give a longer duration of antibody in this individual. So when it comes to the mystery behind COVID is really kind of mysterious for us because it's a new virus. The studies are still ongoing, but people should be more careful not to come in contact with COVID. That's my own advice. Do the non-pharmaceutical intervention strictly. Avoid social or physical distancing if possible. Then if you don't need to go out, do not go out. And again, when it comes to the vaccine as well, it's not a silver bullet approach that once you get the vaccine, you may likely not get COVID again. You may get COVID, but maybe you won't get to the level of severity. However, you may be the one who will get to the level of severity as well.
You know, quickly, before we get to all those aspects of who should and who shouldn't, take the jab, for countries that are getting ready to receive the vaccines, How should they prepare, to administer this? Because one should have thought by now there should have been some kind of sensitization going around in places where these vaccines are being administered. Take us through this so that, if possible, you can kick in this if there are categories of persons that shouldn't go close to the vaccine.
You've asked a very vital question again. So there was a study that was done here late December last year, and the study was repeated again sometime in February this year as well. This study, we found out that white people, the chances that they will always go for the vaccine is high. But funny enough, this is in the UK, right? So funny enough, the Black populace, people of minority ethnic group, there's high level of vaccine hesitance among these people. So even health workers as well, health workers, GPs who are Black or Asians or Bangladesh, they're not really taking this vaccine. So you could see that despite the awareness we've done here in the UK, there's still vaccine hesitance here in the UK. Now let's go down to Nigeria. You know that vaccine conspiracy has been on a high level across the world, not just in Nigeria or Africa. At the same time, remember that Nigeria, we kind of boast about that we've kind of deployed polio vaccine. We have the necessary machinery and what have you. That is really good as well. But again, don't forget that you are actually going to deploy this vaccine on older population. So these people are more exposed, they are more knowledgeable, they can make their own decision themselves. And when it comes to the logistics of deploying this vaccine, what we should have in place by now is that there should be high level of sensitization in the country or in the continent, which is not what I'm seeing in Nigeria as a case example. So for instance, if you bring in the COVID vaccine tomorrow, like as anticipated, these vaccines actually, don't also forget that they have a shelf life. And the shelf life means that for this Oxford AstraZeneca is 6 months. So if your vaccine stays for 6 months, which is 4 million doses for Nigeria, and people are not coming forth to take this vaccine, you've wasted all those doses basically because you've not done the necessary sensitization of your populace. So if you go out now to ask the government officials that, is there any survey that tells the number of Nigerians who are willing to take this vaccine, I'm not sure there's any reasonable, robust, the word here is robust. There's no robust survey in Nigeria that actually tell who are willing to take this vaccine. That is one. Two, on WHO website, I read recently that when it comes to vaccine uptake in Nigeria is somewhere around 30 to 45%. What that means is the number of persons who are willing to take vaccine, not just COVID, all vaccine before COVID, who are willing to take vaccine is somewhere around 45%. So if you have 45% of people who are willing to take vaccine, then you then have the controversy surrounding COVID all along for the last 11 or 12 months, plus all the conspiracy theory, anti-vaxxers, and some top experts in Nigeria, government officials, religious leaders have rolled out all sorts of misinformation. You're going to have this hurdle deploying this vaccine in the continent or in Nigeria. And once this hurdle comes into play, it means that the majority of vaccine will be wasted in Nigeria or in Africa.
That's a big one, knowing full well that some categories of persons in Nigeria will rather go for the herbal treatment because they believe that is more efficacious, irrespective of what you say to them, even those who are well learned. But take us through this. Let's close on this. Are there categories of persons who shouldn't present themselves for the jab?
It depends on the vaccine you're going for. Like I said, there is minimal information we know about Covishield now. Although the Indian official, they are trying to say that because Oxford AstraZeneca, which is the patent rights they are using to produce Covishield, has their own criteria and the same efficacy, they believe they're going to reproduce the same thing as well. But when it comes to people who shouldn't take the vaccine, like what we got from the NHS here in the UK, we're told that if you have any form of allergy that is so critical, you shouldn't go for the vaccine. Again, how many Nigerians are aware of their allergies? We're also told that if you are pregnant or you're breastfeeding or you're expectant, you shouldn't go for the vaccine as well. So it all depends on the vaccine we're going for. And that is where communication comes into bear. So the Nigerian government or many African countries should be on the forefront trying to preach the exact information the people need to know. Like I said some time ago on this same platform, I said that there was a leaflet that was delivered to my own apartment whereby the government have detailed information of what the vaccine entails, people who shouldn't go for the vaccine. The reason why you need to bring all this information clearly to the populace is for them to understand that you are being transparent here. Because once they have this full detailed information, then they'll be able to make their own informed decision. But if you go about it in more like in secrecy, and they then discover on their own what the vaccine is all about, then again, you have vaccine hesitance. Absolutely. And again, just to wrap up here is that COVID-19 vaccine is not the only vaccine we're going to have in the near future. So whatever decision we make today may likely kind of hamper all of the other vaccines that may come up in future, whereby vaccine hesitance will keep going on the increase because we've not done our homework and we've not really duly informed people on what they need to know. Again, finally, like I said, we need to tell Nigerians or Ghanaians that the vaccine you have is actually reproduced from Serum Institute of India, which is codenamed Covishield. So based on that, there is still clinical trial phase 3 ongoing on that particular vaccine. And again, I've not seen anywhere where we are told about the efficacy of this vaccine. So if you don't know the efficacy of a vaccine you intend to deploy, then why do you want to go ahead to deploy that particular vaccine? Let's follow through the science and let's do gradually. And as we roll along, then we can see what exactly we are doing. I think South Africa are actually doing very well as well, and Kenya.
Well, it's a fine place to rest this today. Many thanks, Dr. Peter MYC. You know, COVID-19 on one hand, insecurity on the other, two things on the table. There's more than enough to chew for Nigerians and Africans in general. I'll be back again tomorrow. Many thanks for being nice company. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.